Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Suspenders Unbuttoned podcast. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Julie, and we're excited to welcome Liam Fearnley to the podcast. Welcome, Liam.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, Liam. It's fun to meet you officially. Thank you for coming by. For those of our watchers and listeners who don't know who you are, why don't you tell them a little bit about your journey into the world of television and how you became involved with One Calls the Heart?
Sure. Got into the world of TV. I entered the industry in 2010, so a little while ago now, on a show called The Haunting Hour, which was a kids horror anthology show. It was a lot of fun because we did a new cast, a new story, a new everything every single week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's kind of like Goosebumps, if you remember that one.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did that for a few years. And then this is actually my second stint on When Calls the Heart. Right. I was on seasons 2 and 3 as the script coordinator, and very fortunate to come back to the show for season 11. And now I've been back for 2 years already. It's been very quickly.
Well, that's funny. So you did 2 and 3, and then you came over for 11 and 12. And the show is very different now.
It's funny. It is different, but I hadn't when I came back, I hadn't really paid too much attention while I was gone to what had happened story-wise, and it was just kind of like coming home. I was like, oh, there's Elizabeth. Oh, there's Lee and Rosemary and all these wonderful people that I used to spend a lot of time with.
Right.
Many moons ago, and now I'm sort of back in Hope Valley. It was nice and cozy.
That's a wonderful way to come back into a show. So as a story editor, what is a typical day for you when you are working on a series like When Calls the Heart?
I would say no 2 days are quite alike, in the writer's room. We could be working through, the minutia of a little beat in an episode or a scene one day, and then the next day talking about broad season arcing stories. So you really sort of have to have your thinking cap on in different ways, depending on sort of what we dive into each day. And we also have writers coming and going as they're on assignment writing their episodes. So we don't always have a full room. So sometimes we're down a few bodies, but it's a very collaborative space. No decisions in the story room are made without everyone weighing in, everyone giving their opinions. It's a when it works, it's a wonderful group effort.
Right. So you meet on Zoom, right?
On Zoom, yeah.
Particular writer's room anyway for now. So when you mentioned that sometimes you don't always have a full house and it's like the writers coming in for their specific episodes, but who would be the standards that would always be in the writer's room?
Generally, you've always got your showrunner. Now, the showrunners obviously do write their own episodes too. And they often have a number 2. We sort of call them the number 2, which is their sort of right-hand person that can lead the room if they're away writing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But oftentimes, if you're the showrunner, you end up just writing outside room hours because you're needed with everybody else.
Oh, that's funny. No, this is all fascinating. I think people that, especially a show like One Calls the Heart with such an invested fan base, learning how the show is created is very interesting.
It's also nice. I mean, I always say there's no real substitute for an in-person room with this Zoom thing since COVID. But the nice thing about Zoom is if you need somebody quickly, you can just sort of text them up and be like, can you pop on the room for 5 minutes?
Yeah.
We have questions for you, kind of thing. And then they're right there. So that's kind of convenient.
So sometimes technology is actually helpful.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, we're able to do this like right now.
Right now from probably 3 completely different areas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All over. So how do you balance when you're working? How do you balance the creative side of the storytelling with the technical side? Because we know you do a lot of, we know you do both.
It can be hard sometimes because every show is different, but we obviously as writers have big broad imaginations, and we obviously can't put everything we think of into each episode, right? We have to take into account the length that a script needs to be, the specific budget that the show has, casting availability changes. We might not have a character for one particular episode because they're busy or something like that. So all that has to be taken into consideration when you're doing the creative work. Even on a show like this, for example, well, most shows really, we have to take daylight and nighttime into consideration too. It's very hard to stage exterior night shots in the middle of summer when the sun doesn't go down till 10 o'clock. So we often, you might notice there are more exterior shots in the first half of a season of When Calls the Heart than the second half, because the second half is shot when it's raining in Vancouver. It's dark.
It's raining and it's dark, right? The daylight goes away, and so you have to think about that when you're writing.
You have to think about all of that, and then try to tell the best story that you can tell with the constraints that you're given. So finding that balance is tough. Not just for a specific episode, but for the whole season in general. But when you really nail it, it's rewarding to see it work.
Yeah. Can you give an example maybe of something that we've seen so far in season 12 that took a little bit of that figuring out?
Well, one example for the interior exterior is the hazelnut harvesting scenes with the kids. I think that was episode 2 or something like that.
Yeah, 2.
Those ended up outside in the beautiful orchard because it was the middle of summer, but originally it was scripted for the barn, right? Okay. So we weren't really thinking when we did it in the barn, and then production was like, let's put this outside. It's August.
Beautiful out.
What a great idea.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. That might explain why we get a lot of the big community scenes in the saloon almost every year. We get one of those tend to be kind of later in the season.
Another reason for that is when it's a big scene with a lot of characters, they take a long time to shoot. You have to get your coverage on every single character. So your light is changing all throughout the day, right? So when you're outside, it's hard to make it match. If the scene's supposed to take place in 5 minutes, but you're going to take 5 hours to shoot it, the sun's going across the sky. Whereas when you're inside, you don't have to worry about that.
Okay. Those are all interesting things for meeting the technical with the writing piece.
It can be really annoyingly technical sometimes.
I know, it must be frustrating. Like, I just want to tell this story. Why is it so complicated?
I was on a show before I came back to When Calls the Heart that took place entirely in a studio. So we shot in a studio exclusively. And, it can be a little dull always being inside, but the great part is we could just turn the sun on or off whenever we felt like it. So it's like, is this a night scene? No, actually, it's a day scene now. And turn the light on, and there you go.
It's daytime.
Yeah.
The advantages, but your outside, your exteriors give kind of amazing shots for the show.
I mean, being exterior Hope Valley is so picturesque, right?
Yeah.
So we try to stay outside as much as we can.
Yeah. I mean, it really is a character of the show. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Like, people know where we're going when we're going down the street. Like, it's another town we know.
Yeah, it helps that it's a standing set that doesn't ever really get taken down. It's always in the same spot. And after 12 seasons, we know what each of those storefronts is, right?
Right. It's hard to fool the fans. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Although this season they worked on making things a lot more different things this season.
For like storefronts or
using the spaces as different things. So when they did well, the train,
Mm-hmm.
the Angelus School. There was a couple of other ones I can't think of right now.
The
but
theater.
the
coming up.
theater, yes, the
A lot
party.
of fun
Yeah, the
stuff.
party. Yeah, we only have so many spaces to shoot, but the whole production design team pulls off some miracles, don't they?
Yeah.
Do you guys ever write things that you're uncertain if it's going to work?
Yeah, I mean, we could put in a new set that's never existed before, and then production will tell us yes or no, if we have the budget for it or we don't. But yeah, I think Sarah, the production designer, and her team, they're able to pull off, and especially this season, they've pulled
Yeah.
off, and the train. I mean, that was in the saloon,
Yeah.
and it just looked brilliant.
Yeah, Chris was telling us how there are people like
Shaking it.
moving his
Absolutely.
Gotta love that.
It's great.
Yep. And we heard they shot all those scenes so they could get it up and then
Yeah.
get it out of the way so you can use the salon.
Yeah, I think they shot them over 1 or 2 days,
Mhm.
and then the train was gone.
Then it was done. Just went on down the track. But it can come back.
It can come back. It's still
Yeah.
there somewhere.
You never know when you're going to need a train again, right?
Yeah.
So did you always know you wanted to be a writer?
No,
Oh.
absolutely not. When I was like in school, I hated writing. I hated English
Really?
class, creative writing or any writing whatsoever. It was the bane of my existence.
So what did you like in school?
I was a computer nerd in
Okay.
school. I loved computer class. When I finished high school, I went to university for computer science for 2 years and hated that.
Okay.
So I left, and then growing up, it wasn't just writing. I didn't like the film industry at all. I'm sure you know who my dad is. Neil
Right.
Fearnley.
Yes.
And when I was a kid, he was always directing out of town. He was never directing in Vancouver, so he would always be gone for months.
So you had like a bad feeling towards that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't until I was, I guess, in my early 20s that I started to come around to the industry as a whole. And my dad told me he was writing a movie one day, and I just thought that was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to do that too. So I spent 6 months writing this movie that's awful, but it was so much fun that I just fell in love with the process. So I was like, let's give this a go. And that was I guess that was probably 2010, and here we are.
Okay. So were you able to use your dad as a guide for how to write a script and all that kind of stuff?
I mean, I think when I started, I'd never even read a script. So I needed a lot of help, and it took a long time. But yeah, I mean, I did, as much as I wasn't a fan of the industry, I did grow up around it.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I was able to use him as a bounce board for what's going to work, what's not going to work, how to format script.
Yeah.
They're very specific in their formatting.
Yeah.
Great.
And then it just sort of, I loved it so much that here we are.
I love this story. That's
yeah, this is a great story.
Yeah.
Like,
did you make this movie, and what was it called?
No, it should never be made. It was called Hopper.
Okay.
It was about Big Ben in England.
Yeah.
The tower,
Yeah.
the clock tower. It was I made it into a time travel device.
yeah.
So I had these two teenagers climb up inside it. As it struck midnight, they were transported back in time to when it was being built.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had to figure out how to get home.
I kind of love this.
I kind of love it too.
If there's any producers listening, I've still got it somewhere.
let's bust that out.
You can dig that out. Yeah.
It feels very Netflixy. Like this feels very much like something you would see on streaming services now.
Yeah, maybe.
I feel like it's something my teenager would enjoy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Who knew? You start out with just right. It's always interesting to us to hear how people ended up where they did. And some people have known since they were small children what exactly what they wanted to do. And some people take a long and winding road to get to where they're at. And we enjoy all the stories of how you get there. So what was the first thing you wrote that you got paid for?
That's actually a tricky question. Because I guess the first thing I technically got paid for, I was hired a few times to sort of help with revisions on scripts that were already being made, and I guess I got paid for those. But the first time I actually got paid to write something from scratch that had my name on it was Snowpiercer. It was a science fiction show that I worked on a few years ago. I co-wrote the series finale of that.
Okay.
Which was lots of fun.
Yeah, that sounds really fun.
It does sound fun. Yeah. So not only are you the story editor, right? But you also co-wrote episode 9.
Yes.
Right, of Buried Treasure with Paul Redford, which is really cool. So we hear, I'm going to go back to that in a minute, but we hear that the story room is very collaborative. So how does that impact you when you're in the story editor role?
The story editor role, you're just every writer has a different title.
Yeah.
And story editor is just one of those titles. But yeah, the When Calls the Hard Room is super collaborative. I've been in a bunch of rooms over the years, and when you put a bunch of people together, you don't always know what the vibe is going to be, right? But in the 2 years that I was on When Calls, 11 and 12, they were just, it's a wonderful group of people. Everyone's bouncing each other's off of each other. It really makes things easier as a whole to figure out the show and to write it when everyone can move forward in unity and feel free to express their opinions and have their individual opinions validated, kind of thing.
Right.
Just like real life, right?
Yeah.
Right. When people are walking alongside you or with you, it's much easier to be more creative and give a lot more options too when you're trying to think things. So when you're writing episode 9, so then when you are the one who's writing it, you wrote this with Paul. How do you divide that up, the workload for that?
It varies. Paul is a super experienced veteran writer.
Yes.
I was very fortunate to get partnered with him. Super kind and generous, and his credit list speaks for themselves.
Yeah.
So every writer has their own process, and when you're putting 2 people on one script, you sort of have to figure out how to make those processes work together. Mm-hmm. It could be that each person gets individual stories that they'll write, which is kind of how we did it on this episode. But it could also be that writer A takes acts 1 to 3, writer B takes acts 4 to 6, and then whatever way you do it, once you've got it all written, you sort of put it together and hope that it is cohesive and the voice is similar. But then you go in and work through it sort of together for the most part and make sure that it sort of speaks as a whole, kind of thing.
Yeah, I was going to ask that, so I'm glad you mentioned about the voice. Because you have a show with so many different writers, and especially when on one script, you would think could be noticeable to have different voices writing. Sometimes we can watch an episode and be like, oh, okay, we think we know who wrote this one, just because some writers have been around for a while.
Right.
So how do you make it feel really cohesive with all these different voices?
We end up reading all the scripts, not just the ones that we write.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have a pretty good idea of the voice of the show. So you can mimic that pretty well. And then once we, the writers, have written it, the showrunner takes a pass at it themselves. So they can, if they're seeing things that don't quite align with the vision of the show or the voice of the show, they'll smooth it out themselves.
Yeah, I can see that extra piece there. Would you ever want to run a show?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah.
I think it's most, I can't speak for every writer, obviously, but I think it's most writers' dreams to, have their own show and shepherd it along.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that actually sounds kind of amazing. Like, to be the big picture person for.
It's a lot of work, and there's a lot of politics involved. So you have to like that too.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
yeah.
Right. Because everyone probably has a point of view that they think should happen. Everyone probably wants to say or put in, right?
It's true. And, you're also, as the leader of the show, of the room, you need to take into account the notes from the network and the notes from the studio, and you may have actors giving you notes as well on their characters. So it's certainly a balancing act to make sure that everyone is having their voices heard. But once you sort of get that and then start shooting, it's a really great thing.
So with a show so this is the 12th season that's airing right now as we're coming into the finale this next weekend.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of exciting.
Can't believe it. Yeah.
Your actors know their characters, because even your new group that came in season 6. I mean, you've had some people come in sooner than that, but I mean, that's a lot of seasons. A lot of shows don't even go 6 seasons, let alone to even newer people, right? And so I would assume, do the actors, because of that, have a little more thoughts about what should be happening?
They can, but I think it's also they're able to take more ownership of the character.
Yeah,
they're the ones that live it and embody it for 12 hours a day, every day as we're shooting. So it helps when, we as writers, we know pretty well how to write the characters, but they really know their characters. So it certainly helps when they can see a line and go, well, I wouldn't say it this way, I would say it that way.
Okay.
And we give them free rein to, have their voice. They know it.
Yeah. So let's talk about episode 9. Yeah. There's a lot of things that happened in this episode. So what were some of the things that you specifically wrote?
It is a very busy episode. I wrote, and again, we sort of did first passes, but then we would go back and work on it together. But I wrote all the Rosemary, Elizabeth, Ava stuff with Mike and Lee at the bar, and that whole deal, right. Which was a lot of fun. I love putting humor into my scripts, and so we really played up Hickham's comedy.
Yes.
Because Ben is just so good at it. I mean, they all are. They all played the comedy there brilliantly. But those were a lot of fun to write and to watch when we finally shot them.
Right. So it wasn't all the trunk misadventures there.
Yeah, the whole trunk thing. Trunk storage got a big laugh in the writer's room when I wrote it.
Because there's, you got to laugh when there's trunk storage is being put in there. And just even like the adventures with the trunk, who, like that trunk had this like series of, it wasn't really there, but talked about before you got it. But you guys actually got to do some stuff with the trunk. So
it was a lot of fun. And the trunk had a stunt double. We couldn't throw our real trunk off the balcony.
Okay.
We needed a different one.
And what was that? Was it too heavy, or
we couldn't? We only had one, so we couldn't damage it.
So you had to make a backup trunk.
We had to make a backup trunk. But I don't think you can tell that it's not the same trunk.
No one knows. That's kind of funny that it had a stunt double. I mean, last season we threw Elizabeth and Nathan off the
Yeah.
balcony. This season, we throw the trunk off. Now, if there were a season 13, I mean, we're probably going to have to look for something to be thrown off the balcony again.
I guess things, play in threes, right? So we'll have to do a third toss off the balcony.
Something's going to come off the balcony.
Yeah. I enjoyed the way those were written and the way they were shot too, with using the balcony, like coming around and peeking through the windows, and
that works really great.
Added to the humor.
When we wrote it, I wasn't quite sure, where the windows were, and if Rosemary and Elizabeth would be able to hide and all this stuff. But Siobhan was able to block it brilliantly.
Yeah.
The director we had Siobhan on, and she very much enjoyed doing the misadventures.
It was lots of fun.
It was great. Yeah, because the physical comedy just added to the script. Yeah, so fun. Okay, so we also have the Garrison Gang, the big action sequence. We loved how I loved how, Julie, I don't want to speak for you, but I love how it tied back into the metal with the Garrison Gang and all the way back to Jack. But it was a really complex story because they have the three different groups. You have Allie and Oliver, you have Nathan and Bill, and then Elizabeth is coming. So when you're writing that, how do you make the choices to make sure, how do you make the writing choices to make sure it works on screen?
This episode in particular was pretty tricky that way, because not only did we have that action sequence, but we also needed to wrap up Ava.
Right.
We had the Canfields leaving town on a train, and that takes, time. So fitting the puzzle pieces together of the structure was tough, and it took us a few goes to get it right, because we also needed Elizabeth in the Ava story and the Garrison story.
Right.
So yeah, I like how it played out. I don't know if there was another way for it to play out in the end. We had a couple other goes at structure that just didn't work. But yeah, it was, this episode in particular was tough that way.
Right. It was interesting just to have three different groups going at the same time. Like you had Allie and Oliver with the Garrisons, and Nathan and Bill
with the random
then Elizabeth going. It's like how to get those all in, coming from different places and getting to the same place and writing that out so that makes sense. It
took a while, let me tell you, more so than a normal episode. And then when we figured out to do the ribbon on the tree, that helped solve a lot of problems for us.
Also, it was brilliant.
It brings everybody to the same spot.
Exactly. Because how else would they know?
Right. Also, it just felt very Allie. Like that's absolutely, she's
Bounty's daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's gonna figure that out. She's a smart girl, right?
Yeah, that was originally supposed to be the hair clip that Elizabeth gave her in episode 4. But it was just harder to see on the tree, and it was hard to get it to stay there. So the ribbon worked as a great plan B.
Visually so good. Yeah. What did you have, like a favorite part of that big action sequence?
To watch or to write?
Both, to write and then maybe to see, or something that maybe that surprised you when you finally saw it on screen.
I loved seeing Sonny Garrison back. He was obviously on season 3. That's when Jack took down the Garrisons, and I really liked that actor, Ben Cotton. So seeing him on screen, he's not like the most menacing guy, but I think the dynamic between the four of them, with Woody and Allie and Oliver, it could have not worked on screen, but it really did work. So I was really pleased to see them sort of throwing the conversation between each other in the way that they did.
Yeah,
was it fun to come back and then write about the storyline that was so big in season 3 when you were working?
I had to remember who they were originally. That was a long time ago, and I did a few shows
since then.
in the middle.
Yeah.
So I was like, who?
Well, the Garrisons, the first time around, were a lot more maybe menacing or something. They kind of lost a little bit of their menacing. Like at first you thought they were, and then they kind of, my husband coined them, oh, they've turned into the apple dumpling gang.
That's one of the reasons why we didn't bring back Jake.
Yeah.
Jake was sort of the really bad one. He's, the kind of person that you don't really want escaping from prison. So we wanted
the children.
So we wanted it to be a little on the lighter side. So Sonny helped in that regard, and bringing in Woody really helped in that regard.
Right.
We didn't want the kids to feel like they were in too much danger.
Yes.
Right.
I feel like we have to ask you about the cowbell and whose idea maybe the cowbell was, and are we to assume it's the cowbell, Elizabeth's cowbell from Jack, or was it just a random one in the barn?
I don't know whose idea it was. It might have been Paul's. We wrote this last summer.
Right.
But I think it's the cowbell. Yeah.
The cowbell.
All right.
I mean, let's ring that bell, right? Because there's bears out there, so you're gonna have to bring a bell with, right?
There's wolves.
Whoops.
Allie's bringing the wolves back. So
yeah, that girl's got focus, man. I like her. So what other story was yours for this episode?
I wrote the Lucas Edie stuff.
Yeah,
that was really fun. Stuff. The dinner scene is a favorite of mine.
So that dinner scene, let's talk about that. These two have had these kind of small, quiet, intimate scenes together, like not so many people around, except for they get some bonus people in their dinner scene, right?
That was very late in the game.
Okay.
Originally, the dinner was just the two of them, with pretty much the same dialogue, but it served its purpose. But it sort of was like, okay, whatever. But we realized in the room that we forgot about Minnie's dinner service. So we made Mike and May forget about Minnie's dinner service.
And the boys forgot that they were supposed to help with that.
Right.
Yeah, we didn't end up getting them in there. But yeah, just adding Hickam and May to that, and again with a bit of the levity, it sort of really just brought that scene alive in a way that it wasn't necessarily.
Right. It made it really fun to watch, right? Because they're trying to do their like little back and forth thing, and then Mike and May are bringing maybe some energy in there. Also, I think we've already seen them playing poker together. We've seen them doing those just them scenes. So it was a fun choice to bring in Mike and May to that scene.
Yeah, I agree. They've had a bunch of scenes where it's sort of just one-on-one.
Yeah.
They're both on opposite sides right now of this big problem that is the cattle ranchers. So there's probably a spark there, but they don't really want to admit to that yet. They have to sort of tiptoe around this professional duty of one of them is governor and the other is, the main legal counsel for the other side.
The cattle ranchers,
So I think that the friendship that they're sort of creating with each other, I think Lucas especially is realizing in this episode that friendship means a lot to him.
Yeah.
So getting that foundation right first before, things are maybe said between them is important.
Yeah, we talked to Amanda about this scene, and she talked about in the moment when they were filming, trying all these different ways of kind of coming in and bringing that comedy and the levity. So, but I think they struck the right balance where it made the seriousness between Edie and Lucas just a little bit lighter so that they could kind of acknowledge the friendship
Absolutely.
between them. Yeah.
I think it worked really well in the end. I was really pleased, especially when we ended up putting those two in the scene.
Yeah.
I was really pleased with how it turned out.
It's perfect. So we also see some growth in this episode. Of course, we have the beautiful scenes with Angela, who's learning kind of how to stand on her own and move on. But we also see these moments with Elizabeth and Nathan that I think the fandom was expecting to go very differently. So historically, they both have a lot of worry about the other one when they're in danger, and then they're put in this dangerous situation and they're both there, but then it ends up just kind of being this lighthearted, adorable moment. Why was that a choice to show that side of it rather than, we've seen them fight in the cabin, we've seen Elizabeth have a meltdown, we've seen all these different ways of dealing with that, and then we kind of saw this really light, cute moment.
I think, they're realizing that they just trust each other, and that, the other person's going to be okay. They know how to take care of themselves. As relationships grow, but, as their relationship grows, we want the characters to grow too. So I think it was important that we not shine a light on the worry necessarily, and sort of show that they're getting more comfortable with each other, certainly than they've been in the past.
Right.
And to have that trust that they know.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing. I
think all we want really is to be able to, trust that our loved ones will be okay, and they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I think, I think showing that growth, I think it's quite beautiful.
Right.
It is. Yeah.
It is. So you have Edie at a point now in episode 9. She's been there a while now. How would you describe her character arc and kind of what role she's playing in Lucas's journey?
I mean, she started out as a thorn in his side, right? I mean, she sort of, inadvertently ruined the whole park, and caused this rift with Lee, and it was a bit of a disaster at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
And I think they're the two of them are sort of slowly realizing that there's more than one way to be right. There's more than one way to approach a solution, and they're slowly converging in the middle on, okay, well, maybe McGinty's not all that great,
right?
And maybe we can figure this out together. And I think just having Lucas trust her a little bit, even though she is still technically his McGinty's lawyer. I think it's been quite lovely seeing them together and sort of figuring this out together.
Yeah, it's a new dynamic for us to watch Lucas in, and I think that makes it really interesting.
It's not the same as Elizabeth.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
or really with anybody that he's first met and tried to just impress. Like when Lucas first came to Hope Valley, he was always doing all these big, huge, fancy things, and that went on for a while. So it's been really fun to watch these quieter moments for him.
I think we're really seeing his growth as a character too. He's still young, so there's plenty of room to sort of figure out how he wants to live his life.
Yeah. When we had Chris on, we were talking about the episode where Lucas tells Edie her tell. So we asked Chris if he thought what was Lucas's tell, and he wished he would have added that into into his character.
Yeah.
What would you think, maybe as a writer, would be a tell for Lucas?
One that doesn't exist
Mm.
would be, maybe he strokes his beard. I don't know.
Yeah, he needs a tell. He needs a
needs a
tell,
tell.
and Edie needs to call him on
He
it.
could adjust his lapel. If we get a season 13, we'll put a tell in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
We need
So,
it.
yeah. Even when he like stops to think for a little bit, like there's some things that he does. So he needs to tell. We were all like, yeah, he needs to tell, and Edie needs to figure it out.
That's a good point. Yeah. Well.
Yeah, because he's
That would
already
be
called
fun.
her on her tell. So
I know. I can't remember if Chris had an idea.
It would have to be one that's very subtle, because
Yes.
we've seen him in a lot of card games.
But there's got to be something. He's got to have a tell, and she's got to figure it out. She's got to call him on it for something good, or whatever it might be, however it comes to. But there's got to be a tell there sometime, because that would just go back to him when he thinks he doesn't have a tell, right?
Yeah, and I think most people think that they don't have tells.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't do them.
Right. What other storylines were you involved in for this episode? Did you do the Angela?
The Angela was sort of a joint project. But man, those scenes, they really, the whole production really pulled those off.
So in this episode, they are going to visit the college for her, for blind students, and she's been very focused all season about going there. And Minnie's is worried, right? Appropriately worried, honestly, as we all worry, when you're starting to send your kids off. But this was just such a lovely adventure. Did you guys, you had blind actors for this college. Did you know when you were writing this, you would be able to have blind actors?
We hoped.
Okay.
But we didn't know, sort of once production saw the scenes, we had the conversation, and they said that we should be able to pull it off. And our whole casting department pulled it off amazingly.
Yeah.
But yeah, when we were writing them, it was a hope. It was a dream.
Right.
Because I think, representation is super important.
Absolutely.
So important.
It was lovely that we got to do that.
Absolutely lovely. The gal who played Clementine was outstanding and just a breath of fresh air.
Wasn't she? Oh yeah.
But what were you guys trying to show with that visit to the audience?
I think, all three of those characters, Angela, Joseph, and Minnie, they're all going on this big adventure, not just to the school, but in their lives. And in Angela potentially leaving to go to Hamilton, it's a huge step for all of them. So I think, the scenes at the school, and then the scene back at the cafe when Minnie is talking to her, it's just about them each on their own trying to figure out how to move forward with their lives, how to take this leap of faith, pretty much is what it is. And then, you never know what's going to be on the other side. It could be amazing,
Right.
Yeah.
And generally it's much better than what you think it's going to be.
We loved how that was peeled back almost through Minnie's eyes, that she could just see how wonderful this actually could be for Angela.
I think she saw that at the school and was able to sort of convey that to Angela when they got back home, in a beautiful way.
Yeah.
And then that shows the growth of Minnie, because, earlier in the season, she was very hesitant. Because, your kids going halfway across the country, that's terrifying.
When they first came to town, she wouldn't even let her go to the school.
Exactly. So it's a big progression for her.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very relatable. This storyline's really hit me hard this season, I think. As a mom who has a child with special needs, I can relate to, even though my son's not old enough yet to be going off like that, but you can
Right.
still relate to these feelings of having to let go and have them figure things out for themselves. And Natasha just did a beautiful job portraying that.
Yeah, it was a great scene for all of them. But yeah, Natasha did a brilliant job.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Beautiful. Yeah. Is there a specific character that you really enjoy writing for?
I don't want to, make anyone jealous, but I in this episode I loved writing the Elizabeth Rosemary
Yeah.
scene.
I see how you did that in this episode.
Those two can just sort of play off each other
Yeah.
in this most wonderful way, especially when you add comedy to it,
Right.
and a little mystery. Rosemary likes the mystery.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun writing the banter between them.
Yeah.
And you can tell they had a lot of fun doing it. Like,
It looks like it, yeah.
Right. Is there a story that you would love to explore on When Calls the Heart?
I mean, I hope we get to explore more of When Calls the Heart.
Well, we all do. Yes.
We do. We all do.
I don't know. I always like seeing when characters' pasts come and catch up with them.
Yep.
It doesn't have to necessarily be a bad thing. But somebody that they used to know, or something that they did that they tried to forget or did forget happened, and then suddenly they're faced with the repercussions of whatever that was. And I don't have any specific examples, but I always love when somebody's past comes back to bite you on the butt.
I think that's fun for viewers to see as well. Yeah.
And we've got such a rich, massive cast that we have a lot of options.
Yeah.
So you go.
No, I was going to say we forgot to bring up Henry. And I wanted to ask your thoughts about Henry this season. There was a beautiful scene with Lucas and Henry in the barn, and Lucas is very vulnerable and Henry offers guidance. And then it was kind of fun to see Henry come back to that little piece of Henry that I think that we all love now, that the business don't mess with me, Henry. So how do you think he's evolved this season, in season 12, as opposed to all the other seasons we've kind of watched him change slowly?
I mean, I think of any of the characters, he's had the biggest journey.
The longest and the biggest.
Yeah. The longest and the biggest. But I mean, he's such a rich character for that, for having gone through everything that he's gone through. This season, I think he's more at peace with himself and his past. He's still trying to stay out of politics, but that doesn't ever seem to work out for too long for him. But
he's good at pulling. He's good at it, though.
He's good at it, and he has such a strong relationship with Lucas. Those two trust each other implicitly. So when Lucas comes calling, he's able to step up to bat and offer his opinions and offer his services. And he's comfortable doing that, knowing that he's not going to necessarily get dragged back to a place where he used to be, kind of thing.
Right.
So watching Lucas go on his journey, knowing what Gowan has gone through on his journey, I think it's a great pairing.
Right. We love mean or bad Henry, but love when he's like that for good. It's like we love that power, that strength, that knowledge, the smarts that he has. And then when he can do that for good, that's
isn't it?
Right. Because
it's like magic when that happens on screen. Yeah.
And McGinty probably deserves it.
Yeah, McGinty deserves it. McGinty deserves it. So you talked about the richness of characters in the show. There are so many. This is a big cast on this show. Are there two characters that haven't had a lot together that you'd love to see together? We had 2 guests on, and they said each other without knowing it.
Oh, the actors said
Separate
each other?
separate days. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Goodness. I think I'd like to see more of Lucas and Nathan together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if those were the 2 that said it,
No.
but I think seeing them together on screen is fun. You know, they're both very different men. They're both very different characters, and the dynamic that they have with each other, given their histories,
Right.
it's just fun seeing them together, I think.
Right.
Right. They have a very layered history, right? So, yeah.
Plus they give a presence on screen. These are tall guys, like, and so
they are tall. Yeah.
Kind of fun to see that, like, you know, they can have when the 2 of them are facing off against somebody else together, then you can kind of get that piece too. We got a little bit of that with
McGinty.
when the 2 of them were facing off at McGinty, right?
Yeah, I loved that scene.
Right.
But yeah, when I first saw them both in real life, I was surprised at how tall they were.
Yeah. These are tall guys, right? So do you want to hear the 2 who said they want to meet?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Jada told us she'd love to see Allie and Rosemary together, and then the next day we had Pascal on, and she didn't even miss a beat and said,
Really?
"Oh, Rosemary and Allie would be so much fun." And I'm just like, well, Jada just said she could be like her mini reporter, or they could.
Jada had it all planned out. Yeah.
Oh wow, that would be fun. Yeah, those I love writing for both those characters.
Yeah. So they have a lot of energy and are both like very smart and very inquisitive, and I'm just like, oh, this could be fun.
And they're both the daughter of a Mountie. Yeah.
They are both the daughter of a Mountie. Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a theme that hasn't really been brought up, but they are both Mountie's daughters. Both kind of have good intuition, and
yeah.
So,
They would be fun together.
They'd be really fun together.
They're turning.
Well, I guess we need a season 13 so we can see that, right?
We need a season 13. Somebody make that happen. Yeah, when Jada said that, we were like, absolutely. And then like the next day we had Pascal, and we're like, this needs to happen.
Yeah.
This absolutely needs to happen. So that we're just throwing that out there because we think it would be a lot of fun. And they haven't had really very many scenes together, and they do have that piece where they're both Mountie daughters. So there's nobody else that can say that.
There you go.
Yeah, something that nobody else can understand. Okay, do you have a dream project outside of When Calls the Heart? I mean, you did mention you would love to show run someday, so maybe that's the dream. But
what kind of project would that be? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'd love to get my own show off the ground one day. I'm a big craft beer connoisseur. And I have a pilot. Again, any producers listening, I have a comedy pilot about these 2 twins that run a craft brewery.
Okay.
And it's an absolute disaster.
Spectacular.
Because it's comedy. And yeah, that would be a dream.
Do you have any experience brewing?
No, but if this film thing doesn't work out, that's where I'm going.
My husband home brews a little bit. I'm like, we got Casey sitting on the landing right now. Yeah. I'm like, I'm here for this. Let's get this going.
He's often like, you get away. I'm doing something with the beer. I don't know what you do.
Sorry, what was that?
What do you do, Julie? Sometimes you have to.
I'm the bottler. I'm like,
I'm
the capper. Just give me a few minutes. I got a cap. We need sterile process here. We can't contaminate the beer, right?
I have extended family members that own a brewery.
Okay.
And so I've toured it, and it's amazing how big these tanks are that they brew this beer in.
Yeah.
Isn't there one right on the same farm as Hope Valley? Yeah.
Yeah, what used to be the mine is now now a brewery.
So like a lovely choice.
It feels meant to be.
It's perfect.
I hope they've got like a mine shaft ale or something like that.
Yeah, as there should be. You need to get that show up and running. That sounds like actually a lot of fun. And as a comedy, that would be really fun. Do you have any projects we can look forward to that are up and coming?
I
Or
mean,
nothing you can
season
share?
12, season 12 is still, going
Great.
on. So we all spent a lot of hard work on that. I
Yeah.
think there's just one episode left. We're recording this just after episode 11 aired.
Yeah.
Yep. 6 days.
So I'm looking forward to that coming out. Nothing else.
Okay. All right.
Would you play a little game with us?
Sure. Let's do it.
It's a favorites game. Do you have a favorite movie?
Favorite movie? I feel like it's a fairly rote answer, but Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a while. I should watch that again.
Yeah.
But, it's a classic.
It is a classic. Yeah.
So good. Do you have a favorite TV series or something you're binging right now?
My all-time favorite TV series is Lost.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I adore that show with all my heart. I worked with one of the writers from it that wrote on seasons 5 and 6.
Okay.
So I picked his brain a lot.
Yeah.
That is cool.
Love
And what are you binging? Anything right now?
Right now, my wife and I are getting caught up on Squid Game.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and enjoying White Lotus every Sunday.
Everybody, White Lotus.
I have not watched the 3rd season yet. What is your favorite food? We know you love you love craft beer. So what do you want to eat?
Beer goes really nicely with pizza.
Yeah. Yep. That's a fantastic answer.
If I was on a desert island, it would be pizza.
Yeah.
And only because the sushi would go bad. that would be my second choice.
Okay.
So in your show with the craft beer comedy where it goes astray, do they also have a pizza? Do they make, custom
pizza
there? Do they have a
oven,
pizza
right?
oven there
Well, I
too?
think that's probably season 2, isn't it?
I think it's gonna have to have.
They're going to have to open up because it's a struggling little brewery, so they're going to have to open up a pizzeria. Yeah.
Yeah. They got to add in they got to build the brick pizza oven and get that going. That's how all the breweries are around here. So.
And then the crew can enjoy it between kids.
Absolutely. How are we getting the show off the ground? We need
it
to see
needs
this
to happen.
Free pizza for everybody. I like it. And beer. Free beer too.
Absolutely.
Are you making your own pizza at home, or is it something you like to just order?
We have made it, but we're not very good at it. So we have our favorite places to go or order from.
Yeah,
that's always nice. So when you're not working all the time, do you have a hobby or something you really enjoy doing?
I do end up writing a lot, even when I'm not working on a show.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to teach myself to play piano.
Oh,
it's not going very well. But I really wish I could play piano. I sort of regret not doing lessons when I was a kid.
Yeah. I regret not sticking with them because I don't remember much. So I understand that feeling. But what made you want to start learning how to play the piano?
I'm always been sort of pretty musical. Like I don't play an instrument, but I sort of get music.
Okay.
In a way, like I just sort of I understand while listening to it, how it was made and sort of where the song's going, even though I haven't heard it before. And I've been told I have a good singing voice. I don't agree. But yeah, I love jazz.
Okay.
So playing a piano just seems like it fits.
Right.
So keyboard is, the basics for like kind of the foundation of music. So
yeah, we've got a keyboard. I try every so often. What I can't figure out is the two-handed thing.
Yeah.
Right. Like I could do one hand okay-ish, but as soon as you add that second hand, I don't know what I'm doing.
Have you taken any lessons?
No, I keep telling my wife to buy me lessons for my birthday.
But maybe somebody who teaches would be able to teach you how that works.
I should probably get on that. I'm not getting any younger.
Yeah.
Take some lessons.
Okay, so what are you listening to? You mentioned jazz. What's your favorite kind of music?
Favorite genre? I listen to a lot of like indie folk
Mhm.
music, like moving in towards the rock genre, but oftentimes what I listen to is a little too slow for my wife, and it puts her to sleep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't like anything like too fast or too loud. I'm a very old man at heart.
So do you have a favorite artist or favorite song?
Dawes.
Mhm.
They're out of LA. They're
Okay.
probably my favorite band.
Okay.
Yeah. Paper Kites.
Okay.
They're an Australian band. They're really good. There's a bunch of Australian bands actually that are really good. Teskey Brothers.
Mhm.
Yeah, they seem to come out with brilliant artists like left, right, and center.
Okay. Big music scene, possibly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll never be able to go there because my wife doesn't want to deal with the bugs. But
Yeah. I mean, it's a valid
yeah,
concern.
it is
I mean, the
true.
bugs are like ginormous.
Yeah. But they come here sometimes, so there's that.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Liam, without giving anything away, is there anything you can tease or a little Easter egg maybe everybody can watch for the finale?
Well, I mean, there's only one episode left, so it's pretty tricky to say much. I feel like I should just keep my lips sealed. I don't want to get in trouble.
That's fair.
That's fair.
But I will say that I love the episode.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's a great episode, and I'm very much looking forward to it airing and to everyone seeing it and enjoying it as much as I did and as much as we all did making it.
Yeah. Well, we can't wait.
Well, thanks for joining us, Liam.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh,
Yeah.
did you have more?
There's more.
Well, the only thing more is where can people find you
Oh,
on
yeah.
social media so they can follow you?
I don't post very often, but I have Instagram and Twitter. My handle is Feariam, which is Feariam.
Okay.
The first part of my last name and the last part of my first name.
Yeah.
It's a handle I've had for many, many years. But don't expect too much content from me.
Limited.
I think you have one post
on Instagram.
Yeah.
There's more than one, but
there's more than one. Okay.
Yeah, there aren't many.